We begin with breaking news in our politics lead. CNN has learned that special counsel Robert Mueller has inquired about the Trump campaign's close relationship with the National Rifle Association and how Mr. Trump came to speak at the organization's annual conference in 2015, 2 months before he declared his candidacy. The NRA has been under public scrutiny for months for its ties to prominent Russians. Just last month, Maria Butina, a Russian national, pleaded guilty in U.S. federal court to conspiracy, admitting she tried to use the NRA to infiltrate GOP circles in hopes of influencing U.S. policy towards the Kremlin. CNN's Sarah Murray joins me now live to break this story. Sarah, how does the NRA fit into the Mueller investigation?
Well, look, Jake, we knew that the NRA had already been under scrutiny from some lawmakers, but this is the first time we're getting any indication that Robert Mueller has been asking questions about it, wanting to better understand the nature of the relationship between the Trump campaign and the National Rifle Association.
They're cannibalizing.
For the first time, a sign the special counsel is interested in the Trump campaign's relationship with the National Rifle Association during the 2016 election.
Part of his appeal was that this guy was going to win at all costs.
Sam Nunberg, a former Trump campaign aide, telling CNN, "When I was interviewed by the special counsel's office, I was asked about the Trump campaign and our dealings with the NRA.
Great honor to be here. I love the NRA.
The questions from Nunberg's interview in February 2018 are the first indication Mueller has been probing the Trump campaign's ties to the powerful gun rights group and was still asking questions about it as recently as a month ago, CNN has learned. While the NRA hasn't been accused of any wrongdoing by law enforcement, it has come under scrutiny for its ties to Russians and massive support of Trump in 2016.
I think that freedom is very important, and the basic of any freedom is, of course, gun rights.
One Russian who had dealings with the NRA, Maria Butina. She recently pleaded guilty to engaging in a conspiracy against the U.S. As part of her deal in December, Butina admitted she tried to build relationships with NRA members as a way to infiltrate Republican political circles and influence U.S. relations with Russia. She worked at the behest of Alexander Torshin, a former Russian banker and lifetime NRA member, who was sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department last year. Years prior to her arrest, Butina even managed to ask Trump about his views on Russia at a political event.
If you would be elected as a president, what will be your foreign politics, especially in the relationships with my country?
I believe I would get along very nicely with Putin. Okay?
Despite Trump's prior support for a ban on assault weapons, he still became a darling of the NRA. The gun rights group shelled out more than $30 million to boost Trump in 2016, according to the Center for Responsive Politics.
To get the endorsement, believe me, is a fantastic honor. And
Mueller's investigators were interested in how Trump and his early operatives first formed a relationship with the NRA.
thank you.
And how Trump wound up speaking at the group's 2015 annual meeting, just months before announcing his presidential bid, according to Nunberg. Trump was helped along by his son, Donald Trump Jr.
Are you sick of winning yet?
An avid outdoorsman who played a role in his father building ties to the NRA.
They love the NRA more than anyone I know. They happen to be my sons. They're lifetime members.
Just great to be here. These are our people. These are the things we do on the weekend.
Now, Jake, we don't know how far the special counsel is digging into this relationship. A spokesman for the special counsel declined to comment. The NRA did not respond to our requests for comment, but it is worth noting that when President Trump received this list of questions from the special counsel's team, they did not ask the president about his ties to the NRA. Jake.
All right. Sarah Murray, thank you so much. Let's chat about this with my expert panel. And Margaret, it's not surprising that the NRA would get behind the Republican nominee. But they got behind Donald Trump very early, and he used to support gun control. I mean, he supported a so-called assault weapons ban. And normally, it's my impression that they're a lot more skeptical of people who find religion on the road to Damascus or Des Moines, as the case may be. Like, they would normally, I think, would be cautious, but they went all in for Donald Trump.
I asked Oliver North about this in October when he did
the head of the NRA,
the head of the NRA, and they're very, yeah, I mean, it might have happened. They might have shown up at the same, but completely hands-off and not wanting to take any ownership of it. And now we actually know that it was a Russian agent who had infiltrated their organization. They're very concerned about the funds that were directed. There were accusations of maybe $30 million. So this organization was a huge funnel for money, and that's obviously what remains to be seen. But the NRA hasn't been doing well financially over the last several years. They haven't been doing well in terms of their membership either. And so it's entirely possible that the innocent answer is that they saw energy behind Donald Trump that could catalyze into membership numbers and real growth for their organization.
Yeah.
But what we know about the reporting to date, and it's big news that Mueller's looking into this, is that Alexander Torshin, former Russian central banker, really sought to build this bridge between Russia and the NRA as a means to influence American politics. And the fact that Oliver North is now running the NRA indicates a need to clean house. But here's you got this rock-ribbed conservative organization that during the Cold War was really, anti-Soviet, all of a sudden finding themselves in a situation where they may have been a conduit for money and influence in American politics from Russia. It's surreal, it's astounding, and this is a real elevation of what the reporters in the Senate Intel Committee have been looking into for some time. And let's remind, I want to show this clip again because it's really just remarkable. 2015, Donald Trump is in, I think, Nevada, doing a town hall of some sort. And Maria Butina asks him a question. This is July 2015. Let's roll that again.
If you would be elected as a president, what will be your foreign politic, especially in the relationships with my country?
I believe I would get along very nicely with Putin, okay? And I mean where we have the strength. I don't think you'd need the sanctions. I think that we would get along very, very well. I really believe that.
I'm guessing that you don't think that's a coincidence.
I don't think it's a coincidence, and I think we now have a lot of different roads that lead us to that point. I think part of the challenge that's going to come out of this is you do have a Republican Party that's very closely tied to the NRA. How are they supposed to, from their perch within Senate Intelligence Committee, actually take a firm look at this without expressing some type of conflict of interest?
And what do you make of all this? I mean, it's just the latest shoe to drop, although we don't exactly know what Mueller has.
Right, yeah, I mean, which is sort of the caveat that we always apply every time we say Mueller. I think it's important to remember, the NRA endorsed Donald Trump, but they did so well after he was the front runner, and I believe well after he'd already won some primaries. So it's not as though they were sort of coming out of the box in June 16th, 2015 saying this is our guy. I mean, it's a political organization.
Sure,
They're
of course. Wait for the winner. Yeah.
Exactly, right. That said, the NRA has had this question looming over them for well over a year now. They've already released a statement saying, we only took X amount of money from Russian interests, which is a question by itself. It certainly is the case, as John pointed out, that I think the Russians, or at least Torshin himself, saw this as a conduit to the Trump campaign. I mean, there were multiple ways in which Torshin leveraged people close to the Trump campaign to try and get a meeting with them, ended up in another weird coincidence, sitting at a dinner at the same table with Donald Trump Jr. at this event in Kentucky during the NRA convention in 2016, which is this whole other question that Mueller is no doubt looking at. There are part of the issue here that we all sort of confront as we talk about Mueller and the Russia investigation is there's so many smoking guns, but we don't know where bullets have been fired or what they've hit, right? And so we have these debates. I mean,
extending the metaphor.
I know. I realized as I was saying it, that was stupid. But anyway.
I would add to that if you care about American democracy and you care about the possible infiltration of our elections, this is a reminder that there are many ways for these elections to be infiltrated. And we've not figured out yet how to confront them going into 2020.
And sadly, oversight during the Republican control of the House was not. Let's just be nice and say it was not everything it could have been.
What was better, the bipartisan oversight on the Senate was much better in the same 2-year period.
One expects, though, that either Cummings or Schiff, the two chairmen of Intelligence and Oversight, opposite respectively, might actually have hearings on that.
They might have hearings on it. They're apparently having a bipartisan retreat for the Intel Committee this next week. So apparently all of the damage from Devin Nunes's chairmanship may be healed.
But that damage can't be underestimated. I mean, yes, it's great that Burr and Warner have led the Senate Intel Committee in a very different direction, and they have done some of the early investigation into these connections with the NRA and Russia. But what Devin Nunes did to the House committee, I think, really does demand scrutiny because they rolled over for the executive branch. They did not apply basic standards of scrutiny and skepticism in a clear and present situation where a foreign power tried to influence on our election, and Devin Nunes tried to act like it didn't exist over and over again.
And we should note the New York Times reporting that the Trump administration's plan to ease sanctions on companies owned by Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska could in fact benefit him and his cronies by providing debt relief and allowing him to still maintain a significant ownership stake. I was very surprised, I have to be honest, maybe I'm naive, at the vote in the Senate. The Republicans did not allow it to go forward, a bill that would keep those sanctions on Deripaska.
Yeah, it's a weird issue. I mean, Donald Trump and his administration are clearly aware of the fact that Deripaska himself is a particularly touchy subject. Deripaska is the guy who had hired Paul Manafort for years and given him tons and tons of money for his work in Ukraine and other places. And Manafort had reached out through this guy, Konstantin Kilimnik, who has alleged ties to Russian intelligence. He had reached out to Deripaska during the campaign saying, hey, we'll offer you a briefing. That they would roll over on this in particular at this point in time, absolutely baffling.